So good morning, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event that is based on team mindset for agility. We will be having interesting discussions. Let me just call upon Mr. Sudipta Lahiri, who is our first speaker of the day, to take over and introduce himself to us and his session to us. We are really looking forward to your session, Sudipta.
Okay, so thanks Nupur, and thanks to the ANI community for actually setting this up. It's been a difficult last 1 month, I suspect, for all of us with the general gloom and doom all around us, and to be able to do something that kind of gets us back to getting our minds into a spirit of positivity and learning is definitely something that I think we were all looking for. So I'm going to talk about a few things that we have done at Digitate to kind of work towards building the agile mindset. A couple of mandatory slides before I start the content. Just a slide about Digitate. We are in the space of building products for Lean Agile software development. If you are in any of the large IT service companies in India, for example, Infi, Cognizant, Wipro, HCL Tech, Virtusa, L&T, Cousins, Pfizer, a lot of the IT service companies in India, KPIT, Zensar, Exaware, I can keep rattling it out. But in all probability, in your projects, you are using a digital product for tracking and delivering all your projects that you are doing. They, of course, call it in different names, but there is an underlying digital product that is a common thread between all these customers that run. I have been in the industry now for almost 3 decades now, and obviously over the years I've played different roles across multiple organizations. I'm a pretty passionate believer in Lean Agile principles. I really feel that the first 20 years of my career, I wish we had this insight when we were developing software a lot differently with a lot different mindset. But things have really changed, and obviously there's a good reason why they have changed, why they're supported with the ecosystem to make this change possible. I am a part of several conferences and meetups, and I do actively participate in the Kanban India conference community. So for folks who are not aware, we actually launched the Kanban India 2020 website. We are open for proposals at this stage, and we look forward to hearing for the submissions from the community in general. So Deming is perhaps one of the biggest thought leaders out there, or he was, is the wrong way to put it. And this is one of the favorite quotes that I often start all my presentations with. It highlights the fact that it's every presentation, every submission talks about an individual's experience or a team's experience or what they did, how they did, etc. What I think is important for anybody who's listening to that is to understand the principle behind what was shared, and then try and understand how that principle can be applied in their context, in their circumstance. The reason why there has been no second Toyota in the planet is because everybody other than Toyota has tried to replicate Toyota. And it just doesn't work, because what Toyota did was to create practices and methods that work for them in their context, in their organization setup. And as long as you don't go through that hard rigor to try and figure out what it means for you and how you need to adopt it in your context, your team, your organization, yourself, more than anything else, it's bound to not give you the results. And therefore, we time and again keep hearing about so many failed transformations, so many teams which report a very marginal improvement. And I think it all boils down to because we miss the essence of what Toyota did, and we try and quickly jump into how they did what they did. So please keep that thought in mind while we go through the presentation today over the next 30 minutes. So the first question that comes is that why are we talking about mindset? Everybody talks about mindset. Firstly, it's a pretty fuzzy word. But why do we talk about mindset? And I think the biggest thing is because the sum total of all the individuals who are in a team or part of the organization make up the teams or that organization's culture. And uh, and like many of you would have heard or read or seen this before, you can do as much of thinking and planning and strategizing and getting the best consultants on ground, etc., etc. But if your DNA is missing or if your DNA is elsewhere, you're not going to be able to nail it. And therefore, it becomes extremely important for us to work on the culture of the organization. And what that essentially means is try and understand that, okay, how do I make that transformation possible in each and every individual's mindset? And so therefore, we're going to talk about mindset today. We're going to talk about a little bit about what Digite has done in terms of some of the things that we have done as we have rolled it out over several years. It's obviously not uh, a one-year journey, and we have made significant impact, and in terms of how we have delivered value to our customers. So the first step, I think it's important for every organization that is wanting to embark in this journey, is to build a vision. The vision is not necessarily to just have the organization's vision. That's a different vision. That's at your organization level. But at your team level, or at your, if I expand the term to say at your circle of influence level, it becomes important for you to be able to craft a vision for that circle of influence that you have. In the case of Digite, we set out with a vision to say we want to be a world-class engineering team. And we define these few things as what we would like to focus on, what it means to be a world-class engineering team. Once you've done that vision, it becomes important to actually sell that vision. More often than not, we kind of really undermine the value of selling the vision. I think one of the huge things that I've seen in the success of Infosys, when in the early 90s, when as part of HCL we used to really compete with them, and a very poor competitor, I would admit, is the fact that Infosys was extremely successful in selling their vision to their own people. And that was very clear in all our interactions with any of the people from that organization. So it becomes extremely important that you evangelize the concept, you evangelize the thought process, and then you sell that vision to your people, because they are going to carry it forward and they are going to execute it for you. So it needs a lot of repetition. It needs a lot of continuous reinforcement. I mean, it should almost be to an extent that it should feel boring to say, oh man, not again. Why is this guy starting up again and again? Okay, but you need to do that, because if you don't do that, the vision gets lost over time. People start losing focus on whenever a decision needs to be taken as A or B, the vision is not in the context of being able to take that decision. Now, like most of the things, you start a journey by setting the right context. And in our case, we do detailed training programs around Lean Agile. We spend a lot of, I would say almost half of the day in part of the 2-day program just to explain why Lean Agile. Because once again, it's not good enough to just, for most people who are familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, it becomes extremely important to understand the why aspect of what you're trying to do. Not the how, not the what, because the how and the what needs to be evolved in the context of the team and the organization. The why is a lot more universal, and the why is what one needs to focus on. And just like the vision, you need to explain to them what's in it for them. You need to be able to explain to them that how life would be different for them. You need to be explained to the managers and to your middle level to explain to them how life would be different for the managers, how the managers' role and responsibility will evolve. And we'll talk about some of that in some of the subsequent slides. But I want you to, again, keep in mind that, so you first get a vision, and then you create a real training program that you need to back up that vision. And when you're doing the vision or you're doing the training program, you need to keep reinforcing to them. You need to keep selling to them what's in it for them, why it's important to them, how will it value add to them, how will they benefit in that process. So with these two broad umbrella points, let me move on to a little more micro level suggestions. So one of the things that we did again very early on was to move from this concept of tasks to stories. Now everybody understands stories, and everybody pretty much has a board on which stories are put today. But to more often than not, I think we miss quite a few key principles of why stories were built in the first place. Of course, stories were built to deliver value. There's no question about it. Built to deliver value. But the fact remains that the concept of agile and its association with user story at a subconscious level was trying to communicate that a person who owns that story delivers that value from start to finish. You give that person full responsibility. You give that, even if there are some technology segments that are required to deliver that value, which they are not aware of, you ask them to collaborate with others who have the technology capability to be able to deliver that story. But they are the owner. They need to be able to take it to themselves and say, this is my baby. This is what I created. Therefore, I will do its value. I will guide how its documentation needs to be done. You need to create that one-to-one association between a story and a story card owner. It's extremely important to move away from the concept of tasks. If you keep one of my pet peeves against a lot of people in the Scrum community who are still not doing value streaming and are just doing task boards, is because you're really just barely scratching the surface of potential benefits that you could gain if you were to value stream. By just plotting tasks, you are essentially ensuring that work is completed, but you're not ensuring that value is delivered. So if you really want to make sure that value is delivered, there's an ownership of the person who's delivering the value, and therefore for that person, there's a mental commitment to the timeline, to the quality, to the success of that value that is being talked about. You need to make sure that sell that concept or story owner to say, this is your story, go ahead and take it and run the show with it. Now you might need to do a lot of upstream grooming for the story before you can give that to that person, but you still need to be able to make sure that that you communicate that yes, this story is owned by you. In correlation with that, as I said, you need to really change the way your middle management looks at work, right? In Digite, for the longest time, you has to have a middle managers who would think and plan for others, right? They would take a scope of work, they'll break it down into tasks, and then say, okay, you do this from this date to do this date, you do this from this date to this date. They will negotiate the estimates with the management on one side, they will negotiate the estimates with the team members on one side. So it becomes important for us to be able to reorient their role from just being leads to actually a mentor and being a coach, to be able to become that very heavily abused word which we call a servant leader, but to be able to actually become a coach or a mentor who could guide people, not take decisions for them. Okay, and that means obviously doing a lot of things, or stopping doing a lot of things which otherwise typically they would land up doing. In the process, they now start having time and bandwidth to be able to contribute themselves. Okay, when you start adding to value added work yourselves, you are a lot more confident, you do a lot less politics, you are a lot more self-assured of the value that you bring to the table. To the extent that if in a team within Digite, if every team member is encouraged to give their confidence vote for the sprint scope at the end of the stand-up, if they're not able to give a 5 or a 4, 5 means that they can do it pretty easily, 4 means that it's a struggle, but they were still pretty confident that they'll be able to do it. If they're not able to give a 4 or 5, the only thing that we encourage them to do is, okay, guys, you guys get into a huddle, regroup and figure out what you need to do and let us know tomorrow how you think you can make it happen. We don't ask the lead to step in and replan for them. We don't do it ourselves. It's the team is only encouraged to say, go get back into a huddle, collaborate, come back to us tomorrow as to how you are going to make it happen. Emphasizing a lean mindset a critical part of the whole process. It obviously encourages flow. I know that Ravi is going to talk about it tomorrow in a lot more detail, but it helps you identify constraints. It makes visible. You are able to see who's doing what. You're able to see who's a constraint or which stage is a constraint. We value stream both our upstream process as well as our downstream process. I have just some snapshots from our own tooling, but you're able to get a sense about what basic things that you need to be able to do in order to be able to encourage a lean mindset. We have not moved to value stream level WIP limits. We just keep it to a user level WIP limits. It works for us. And I think it's important for us, given our level of maturity, to not try and jump things to what we are not comfortable with. And I think that's an advice that I would encourage many other teams to take. First is not to put WIP limits just for the heck of putting WIP limits and not doing anything about it. Number one. And number two, if you do want to start with WIP limits, start with what's called as a swim lane level WIP limit or a con WIP, and then move to a user level WIP limit, and then only think about a value stream level WIP limit. You need to really have a lot more stable demand and a demand pattern and even a capability pattern to be able to actually move to value stream level WIP limits. Something which is which we are very passionate about. One of the things that we often notice is a very high level of focus on the team in saying, you guys become agile, you change your mindset, you need to do this. But the rest of the ecosystem stays exactly to the same way and to the same doctrine that was advocated in the 90s and 50s and 60s, depending upon whatever was the management philosophy that was advocated at that point of time, whether it is a CEO driven organization, whether it is an MBO driven organization. But all our traditional appraisal mechanisms have kind of always interpreted work in that fashion, and have looked at people's contribution and people's value in that manner. It's a very competitive world out there. They will plot them in a bell curve. Of course, there has been a lot of literature and people have moved away from bell curve. But one of the key important things that we have focused on is to highlight the fact that it's not important for you to just deliver your job well. It is important for you to be able to add value to the team as to which you're part of. So even the best guys, even if they do the best of the job, their difference in their appraisal comes not from their own contribution to the team, but from what they did for the team. And it's extremely important to be able to highlight this, because if this is done right, it has really an exponential potential, because now you have everybody in the team who's encouraged and focused on thinking, how can I make this better? How can I help the team? What can I do to make sure that this bottleneck or the constraint is removed? So it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. We have had difficult situations where we have not given rating to people as per their expectations and stuff. But obviously, we have tried to communicate to them why that is the case. So this is just a sample snapshot that I've taken from our Google Forms that we use to collect our appraisal feedback. But what you see is that that we focus on right here. We focus on what did you do for the team. Okay, my contribution to the team, in one quarter and in the next quarter. Of course, they have the opportunity to be able to highlight what they did themselves, but it's extremely important for them to be able to specifically call out and say, what did they do for the team? Okay, and if you notice here, we therefore take their ratings or whatever they think is an appropriate rating, and then we again give a different rating or the same or the different rating, doesn't matter, but we rate on whether you are actually able to value add to the team. You see a question here, we again push them in that direction. So we kind of ask them to say, how would I like to contribute to the team in the future? Many people make the mistake of just saying, I did so many things, these were my individual stories, and therefore sum total is my contribution to the team. That's not the case. You really need to highlight to the fact that your sum total of individual contribution is not the team contribution. You really need to make an improvement. And there's a last one that I kind of would highlight. Everybody has, or many people who are familiar with the Management 3.0 work are familiar with kudo cards. But I think the value of kudo cards is kind of is underappreciated. What kudo cards do is that they democratize the reward and the recognition process. Instead of this being a very typical, a senior and a hippo-based decision, kudo cards help you to democratize the process where suddenly it becomes to say, hey, how can I earn recognition and appreciation from my own peers? And that obviously is way more gratifying than somebody who half the time is misled, has a wrong perception or has an incorrect perception, and is quite distant from the ground reality, taking a call to say who should be rewarded or when they should be rewarded. In the same process, if it's in my previous slide here, I've had to truncate that, but we do actually here in the adjacent columns collect data about who are the peer level mentors, who are the people who are actually acting as mentors to everybody in the team. And we make it a point to make sure that people who are unofficially getting recognized as peer level mentors, not the team leads, but the peer level mentors, we make it a point to go out of the way to recognize. Again, the reason is simple. If you set in that culture to make sure that you encourage and reward mentoring, then it automatically helps in making sure that people are a lot more focused in making sure that, yes, it's not just my own work, it's my team's work, it's my team's outcome. How can I help them become better? So that's what I want to end this session with. Once again, I hope I've given you some pointers to be able to think about in terms of how you could go about in your journey if you face some bottlenecks, or if you're getting a general sense of disconnect within your teams, how you could get out of that pattern. But the idea is that if you do small things on a fairly continual basis, and by the way, most of this is available in the community knowledge repository. So if you do this in a small, simple steps over a period of time, you will be able to create the impact that you want to see. That's it. Thank you, guys. I'm open to any Q&A if there is some time for Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sudipta, for wonderful session. Yes, we have a few questions received in the chat box. I'll read out one or two to you.
Go ahead. Let me try. Shall I just go ahead because I can see the questions here? Okay, so the question first that Yogesh has asked is, when we sell the idea with the team with the word lean, it brings a fear of losing position because okay, fair point. So don't call it lean, call it transformation, call it change for the 21st century. Give it any nomenclature. In fact, I totally agree with you. In many of my consulting assignments, I often repeatedly make it a point, please don't use the word Scrum or Kanban or SAFe. It's not worth it. You can easily stick on to the core principles and say, let's generate value, let's generate transparency and put work on a flow, make all your work items visible. Let's reduce multitasking so that you can generate more value faster. Same thing with Scrum. Let's do a stand-up so that everybody comes together, collaborates, and gets into a huddle. Let's do our burn down. So I'm saying it's a lot easier to focus on the reasons behind some of those practices and then highlight them instead of trying to take the word around lean and agile and any of the doctrines and the religions that are out there. So I hope, Yogesh, I've helped you with that. How to align people unwilling to adapt to agility despite the best efforts? It's great question. And I actually, we have been at it for a period of time. I did a talk on this in the Agility Today conference in Gurgaon about a month back. That was just before everything kind of went into a freeze mode. I will put that slide deck, and if they go ahead and send the video link, I can share that. You can reach out to me over LinkedIn. But yes, you're absolutely correct. The mistake that we make is that we think that we have a message and that everybody will uniformly accept that message. Nothing can be further from the truth. right? Every sales team is trying to make a value prop and sell. That doesn't mean that every prospect buys your tool. Why? Because the message sings to them and resonates to them differently. So what you need to understand is take a micro and a macro approach to make sure what will resonate within my people. And it's a slightly different topic, but it's a great point. And if you reach out to me, I can share some of the things that we have done in that area. Uh, how to bring change in the traditional managers who believe in controlling the team. My only thing is, I would encourage you to highlight on two things. First, become a coach or a mentor. We are not saying that you are no longer having people with for whom you want to be a coach or a mentor, but don't be a manager. Guide people, don't tell them what to do. I think there's a difference, and that's a difference that one needs to focus on. The second thing, I think it's also important to tell your middle level to say, hey, if you guys are not going to do this, you're going to become very obsolete. You're going to become, technologically dinosaur era people, that you're going to become untouchable very soon in the community, because technology will move fast. If you're not able to keep pace with it, you're not going to be able to sustain yourself in this market. So it's important that you give a lot more to them, so that you get the bandwidth for you to invest in newer technologies that you can learn and add back value to the team. So those are some of the things that you can do. But clearly, you need to talk to them, keep talking to them, and helping them ensure that that they're getting the message.
Thank you so much, Sudhi, for
No
your
problem. I'm going to
time and
stop it.
for
Thanks,
for
guys. Thanks for hearing me out.
yeah, thank you so much.